Your social security check is dying a slow death, and most people don't even realize it yet. Paris? Gone. Amsterdam? Way gone. And honestly, a lot of American cities aren't much better anymore. Rent alone is eating people alive. But 2,000 miles east, the numbers start telling a very different story. And here's what most Americans get completely wrong about retiring abroad. They hear Europe and they picture Lisbon. They picture Barcelona. They picture cobblestone streets with a €5 espresso. What they don't picture is the bidding war for a one-bedroom apartment that went from €700 to €1,300 in 4 years flat. Portugal and Spain didn't just become expensive, they became competitive. You're not just fighting local renters anymore. You're going up against digital nomads, remote workers from Silicon Valley, and property investors from 3 different continents. Meanwhile, most Americans have never even typed Bulgaria or Montenegro into a search bar. That's exactly where the opportunity still lives in 2026. Farther east, where fewer people are looking, where prices haven't caught up. Yet. But they will. They always do. So today, I'm showing you 7 countries where $1,600 a month can still buy a real life, and the 3 traps that destroy most people who try this without doing it right. Country number 7, North Macedonia. Let me start with a country that almost never makes any list, and that's exactly why it's on this one, North Macedonia. Most Americans couldn't find it on a map if you gave them 3 tries. But here's the thing about places nobody's heard of. They haven't been discovered yet. And in the world of affordable living abroad, that's worth more than almost anything else. Picture this. You wake up in a clean, furnished one-bedroom apartment in Skopje, the capital, and you paid somewhere between $250 and $400 a month for it. Not a dump, not a closet, an actual apartment. You walk downstairs, grab a coffee and a full breakfast at a local cafe for about $4, and sit outside watching a city that doesn't feel like it's been swallowed by Instagram tourism yet. And once you get outside Skopje, you get Ohrid. Lake Ohrid is one of the oldest lakes in the world, UNESCO listed, crystal clear, surrounded by mountains, and you can rent a place there at prices that would make someone in Lisbon physically cry. Lakefront living in Europe that simply doesn't exist in the West anymore. That's not a sales pitch, that's just the math. Local groceries are embarrassingly cheap by American standards. Utilities run well under $100 a month. A restaurant meal for 2, including drinks, can be done for $15. This is just what life costs when you're not in a country that's been overrun by foreign money. Americans can enter visa-free for up to 90 days within any 180-day period. Not the most flexible setup, but for a slow 3-month trial run before committing to anything, more than enough time to figure out whether you love it or hate it. Now, I have to be straight with you, because this video isn't a travel brochure. Healthcare outside Skopje is limited. Air pollution in Skopje during winter consistently ranks among the worst in Europe. Not a small thing if you have respiratory conditions. English is nowhere near as common here as it is in Romania or Montenegro, and there's no retirement visa designed specifically for Americans. You'll need a local attorney and a legal basis for your stay. North Macedonia is for someone who prioritizes cost above everything else. The reward is a cost of living that almost nothing else in Europe can match. But country number 6 gives you those low prices and full European Union access. Let's go there next. Country number 6, Bulgaria. In 2026, Bulgaria officially adopted the euro, and for anyone thinking about living there, that's a signal. Bulgaria is locking itself more tightly into the European system. The question everyone's asking is, how fast do prices follow? Right now, they're still low, strikingly low. Imagine renting a clean, modern apartment in Sofia, a real European city with museums, restaurants, a growing tech scene, and direct flights to most major European hubs for somewhere in the $400 to $600 range. Or skipping the capital entirely for Plovdiv, one of the oldest cities in Europe, with a beautifully preserved old town that costs a fraction of what you'd pay in Lisbon. Or maybe you're a coast person. Varna sits on the Black Sea, a proper seaside city with restaurants, healthcare infrastructure, a younger population, and winters milder than inland Eastern Europe. For $1,100 to $1,400 a month total, you can live well here. Not survive, live well. Bulgaria operates one of the lowest flat income tax rates in the entire EU, 10%. For Americans with pensions, foreign income, or investment returns, that matters. Combined with EU residency rights, you start seeing why financially minded expats have been quietly watching Bulgaria for years. Now, the reality check. Population decline is visible outside major cities. Villages emptying, aging infrastructure, limited English in smaller towns. Bureaucracy moves slowly. Residency paperwork and property transactions both require a local lawyer and serious patience. Public healthcare is underfunded, though private clinics in Sofia have improved significantly and remain far cheaper than anything in the US. You still need international insurance as a safety net. Bulgaria isn't perfect, but for an EU country with real cities, real coastline, and a cost of living that still makes sense on a fixed American income, it's one of the most practical options on this entire list. But if you want the best combination of modern infrastructure, EU membership, fast internet, and still affordable prices, that's Romania. And that's next. Country number 5, Romania. Romania keeps showing up on expat lists, and there's a very good reason for that. It's an EU country, fully inside Schengen, internet speeds among the fastest in Europe, not just good for Eastern Europe fast, but competitive with anywhere on the continent. Major cities like Brasov, Cluj, Sibiu, and Timișoara have educated, English-speaking populations, functioning urban infrastructure, and real cultural scenes. And it still costs a fraction of what you'd pay in Western Europe. That combination is rare. Actually, it's almost unique at this price point. Life in Brasov, a city at the foot of the Carpathian Mountains, surrounded by medieval architecture, ski resorts 30 minutes away, Bucharest 2.5 hours by train. A well-located one-bedroom runs $450 to $600. A great coffee shop on your street, a modern grocery store 3 blocks away, a hospital that doesn't scare you. Spending maybe $1,300 a month total and living well. Sibiu is smaller, a preserved Transylvanian city with German roots, and a surprisingly international atmosphere. Cluj is Romania's tech hub, younger, faster, more expensive than Brasov, but nowhere near Western European prices. Timișoara sits near the Hungarian and Serbian borders, multicultural, underrated, and consistently cheaper than the other major cities. Schengen membership means freedom of movement across 29 European countries, enormous if you want to travel, visit family, or maintain flexibility long term. Now, the honest part. Residency isn't handed to you just because you show up and like it. You need a legal basis: work, self-employment, investment, or documented remote income. No simple passive retirement visa exists for Americans. Public hospitals vary enormously by region, and most expats rely on private clinics plus international insurance. Bucharest traffic is genuinely brutal. Winters in Transylvania are cold, gray, and long. But for someone who wants EU infrastructure, EU rights, fast internet, English-speaking communities, and prices that don't feel like punishment, Romania might be the smartest all-around choice on this entire list. Romania is serious and structured, though. If what you actually want is urban energy and a city that feels alive at midnight on a Tuesday, Serbia is calling your name. Country number 4, Serbia. Let's be honest, not everyone moving abroad wants to retire quietly. Some people want a life, a real, full, urban life. Good restaurants, late nights, strong coffee, music, culture, and the kind of energy that makes you feel like you're actually somewhere. Not just surviving on a budget, but genuinely enjoying your days. That's Belgrade. Belgrade has one of the most underrated cafe and social cultures in all of Europe. This is a city that goes to sleep late, wakes up slowly, and does both with serious style. The food scene has exploded over the last decade. The music culture, especially jazz and electronic, draws people from all over Europe. And unlike Lisbon or Prague, Belgrade hasn't been fully consumed by the tourist machine yet. It still has grit. It still has personality. It still has locals who actually live there. A solid one-bedroom in a decent Belgrade neighborhood runs $450 to $700 a month. For $1,200 to $1,600 total, you're eating out regularly, keeping your social life active, and not stressing about every purchase. Novi Sad, 90 minutes north of Belgrade, gives you a slower, quieter version of Serbian life at even lower prices. A university city with a young population, a beautiful old town, and enough infrastructure to live comfortably. Private healthcare in Belgrade is genuinely affordable by American standards, and Serbia still feels undiscovered by the retiree crowd. You'll find a small, growing international community of people who got here before the crowds did. Now, the honest part. Serbia is not in the EU or Schengen. That limits freedom of movement and removes the legal protections EU membership provides. Residency pathways exist, but aren't designed for passive retirees. Belgrade winters are cold and gray, and inflation has pushed prices up meaningfully. The window for ultra-cheap Belgrade living is narrowing. But for someone who wants real city energy at prices Western Europe stopped offering years ago, Belgrade still delivers. If coastline, warmth, and the most favorable short-stay policy for Americans anywhere in Europe sounds better, country number 3 changes the game entirely. Country number 3, Albania. 1 year, visa-free. Let that land for a second. As an American, you can walk into Albania and legally stay for up to 365 days without applying for a single visa. No paperwork before you arrive, no appointment at an embassy, no waiting. Just land and live. In a European landscape where visa flexibility for Americans is constantly shrinking, where 90-day limits define most of the continent, that is an extraordinary policy. And it gives you something incredibly valuable: time. Time to figure out if you actually like the country before you're forced into expensive residency processes. Time to test a coastal city versus the capital. Time to learn the rhythms of daily life without the pressure of a ticking clock. Albania's Ionian and Adriatic coastlines have been quietly drawing a growing number of expats and digital nomads who figured out a secret that most of the world still hasn't caught on to. This is Mediterranean living at prices that stopped existing in Greece, Italy, and Croatia years ago. Saranda sits directly across the water from the Greek island of Corfu. You can literally see Corfu from the waterfront. Turquoise water, a mountain backdrop, a growing restaurant and cafe scene, and an emerging expat community that's still small enough to feel like you're in on a secret. Rent for a one-bedroom in Saranda runs anywhere from $300 to $500, depending on how close to the waterfront you want to be and what time of year you're looking. Vlora is larger, a genuine mid-sized Albanian city with a beautiful bay, a livelier local scene, and prices that mirror or undercut Saranda. Tirana, the capital, is faster, more chaotic, and actively modernizing. If you want the energy of a city that's visibly transforming in real time, Tirana is fascinating. Restaurant meals in Albania are genuinely inexpensive. A full seafood dinner for two with wine on the Saranda waterfront might cost you $25. That's not a typo. Local groceries are cheap. Utilities are low. The total cost of living for a modest but comfortable lifestyle runs between $1,000 and $1,400 a month, which makes Albania one of the most budget-friendly coastal options anywhere in Europe. Younger Albanians in cities and tourist areas typically speak strong English. The hospitality culture here runs deep. Most Americans who spend time in Albania report feeling genuinely welcomed in a way that doesn't feel transactional or forced. Now for the honest conversation. The 1-year visa-free allowance is not the same thing as permanent residency. When your year is up, you need a legal status to stay, and building that requires working with local lawyers, proper documentation, and patience. This is a great entry point, not a forever solution. Healthcare infrastructure remains weaker than Western Europe. For anything serious, you want international health insurance and a plan that includes evacuation coverage if needed. Healthcare in Tirana is improving, but outside major cities, it varies significantly. Tirana's urban development is interesting. Construction is everywhere. Zoning seems to be more of a suggestion than a rule, and the city's visual character can feel chaotic if you're coming from somewhere more ordered. It's charming to some and overwhelming to others. Albania's international reputation for corruption and organized crime is real, though violent crime against foreigners is relatively uncommon, and most expats report feeling safe in daily life. Infrastructure outside major tourist corridors can be rough. But here's the bottom line. Albania gives you something almost no European country gives Americans anymore. Time to explore without bureaucratic pressure. And coastal Mediterranean life at prices that feel like a different era. But if flexibility and low cost in a place with rapidly growing international appeal is what you're after, Georgia might be the most interesting option on this entire list. Country number 2, Georgia. There's a moment, and a lot of expats talk about this, where you land in Tbilisi for the first time, and you think, how did I not know about this place? The architecture alone stops you in your tracks. Old Tbilisi looks like no other city in the world. Carved wooden balconies hanging over narrow streets, ancient sulfur bathhouses built into cliffs, a skyline punctuated by medieval churches and modern art installations. It's visually arresting. And then you discover that a beautiful apartment in the old town runs $400 a month, and a phenomenal dinner with local wine costs $15, and your internet is faster than what you had in your American apartment. Like Albania, Americans can stay in Georgia for up to 365 days visa-free. No application, no appointment, no cost. Land and live. That policy has made Georgia one of the most popular destinations for American remote workers and early retirees who want maximum flexibility with minimum bureaucratic friction. Tbilisi has developed a genuinely strong international community over the last 5 years, partly driven by the remote work wave, partly by the extraordinary visa policy, partly by word spreading through expat networks that this city offers a quality of life that's hard to match at this price. You'll find international cafes, co-working spaces, English-speaking communities, and a hospitality industry that's evolved to serve foreign visitors and residents well. Outside Tbilisi, Batumi offers Black Sea coastal living with a completely different vibe. Warmer winters than the capital, a modern beachfront, a more resort-flavored atmosphere, and prices that remain low. Some people split time between the two cities. A lot of people arrive in Tbilisi and never make it to Batumi because they get absorbed into the city before they ever leave. Georgia's food and wine culture alone is worth the trip. Georgian cuisine is one of the most underrated in the world. Complex, generous, communal. The wine tradition goes back 8,000 years, and natural wine from Georgian Qvevri clay pots has become a genuine international phenomenon. Eating and drinking well in Georgia does not require spending money. Now, here's where I need to slow down, because Georgia gets oversold online, and I want to give you the real picture. Georgia's tax situation for foreigners is more complicated than most influencers describe. The territorial tax system sounds attractive, the idea that foreign-sourced income might not be taxed. But the rules around what counts as foreign-sourced, how residency is defined, and what your US tax obligations are on top of it, that's genuinely complex. You need an accountant who understands both US expat tax law and Georgian tax law before you make decisions based on anything you heard on YouTube. Geopolitically, Georgia carries real risk. Russia controls approximately 20% of Georgian territory, the occupied regions of South Ossetia and Abkhazia. The political situation has been unstable, with significant protests in recent years over the direction of the government. This is not an imaginary risk. It's an ongoing reality that every foreigner needs to factor into long-term planning. The Georgian language is one of the most linguistically unique in the world, and also one of the most difficult for English speakers to learn. In Tbilisi's international districts, you'll manage fine in English. Outside that bubble, communication gets harder fast. Healthcare is improving, but still requires international insurance as a serious baseline. Don't rely on the public system for anything beyond basic care. Georgia is remarkable. The cost, the culture, the food, the landscape, the freedom of that 365-day entry. It's a genuinely special combination. But it rewards people who go in with clear eyes about the trade-offs. And those trade-offs lead us to the #1 country on this list, one that combines scenery, safety, European positioning, and a lifestyle that still feels like a secret before the world fully catches on. Country number 1, Montenegro. Let me tell you what Montenegro actually is, because the name alone doesn't convey it. Montenegro is a country the size of Connecticut that somehow contains the Bay of Kotor, one of the most dramatic fjord-like inlets in the Mediterranean world, the Durmitor National Park, raw, mountainous, genuinely wild, a coastline with crystalline Adriatic water that rivals Croatia and Greece at a fraction of the cost, and a medieval old town in Kotor that is UNESCO listed and looks like it was designed specifically to make you question every life decision that kept you somewhere more expensive. All of this packed into one small country with a stable euro currency, a government actively pursuing EU membership, and a cost of living that still makes sense on a fixed American income. Herceg Novi sits at the entrance to the Bay of Kotor, and it's the kind of place that makes you angry you didn't find it sooner. Lower prices than Kotor, a genuine local community that doesn't disappear in October, a historic old town, mild winters, and views across the bay that you'd pay 10 times more to look at in Italy or France. A comfortable one-bedroom runs between $500 and $800 depending on timing and location. Podgorica, the capital, is less glamorous but more practical. Better healthcare, better administrative services, more consistent infrastructure year-round, and lower rents than the coast. If your priority is practical rather than picturesque, Podgorica solves problems that Kotor creates. Property ownership can support residency applications here, meaningful for Americans thinking long-term rather than just extended stays. English is widely spoken in tourism-heavy areas, safety is consistently strong by Balkan standards, and Montenegro's active EU accession negotiations mean the country is aligning its systems and laws with European standards, a very different trajectory than countries not on that path. Now, the real talk. Coastal Montenegro in summer is not the same place as coastal Montenegro in January. Prices spike during tourist season, some properties doubling in rent between June and September. Then October arrives and half the businesses shut until spring. Go for a winter before you sign anything. Residency paperwork moves slowly. Public healthcare is limited. The real estate market is small and can be volatile. But here's why Montenegro is #1. It's not the cheapest. It doesn't have EU membership yet. What it has is a feeling that's almost impossible to replicate. Somewhere genuinely beautiful, genuinely safe, positioned on the right side of Europe's trajectory, before the full wave of discovery arrives. That window exists right now. It will not exist forever. And that's the most important lesson across every single country on this list. And now, the 3 traps that destroy most people. Trap number 1, the tax surprise. Here's the thing nobody tells you at the beginning. As an American, you don't stop filing US taxes just because you move to Bulgaria or Georgia or Montenegro. The US tax is based on citizenship, not residency. That means you're filing every single year regardless of where you live. And if the country you've moved to doesn't have a solid tax treaty with the US, you could be looking at complicated dual obligations that cost you far more than you saved on rent. A cheap country becomes an expensive country fast when an unqualified accountant gives you bad advice, or when you trust a YouTube influencer who isn't a licensed tax professional. Hire a US expat tax specialist before you move, not after, before. Trap number 2, the healthcare reality. Medicare does not follow you overseas. Almost universally, it doesn't cover treatment in foreign countries, which means the moment you board that plane to Tbilisi or Skopje, you are on your own medically unless you've made a plan. International health insurance, local private coverage, or a genuine understanding of what cash pay healthcare costs in your target country, you need at least one of these sorted before arrival. The cheapest countries on this list often have the weakest public healthcare systems. That's not a coincidence. That's the trade-off you're making. Know it going in. Trap number 3, the visa illusion. A tourist-friendly entry policy is not permanent residency. Countries change their immigration rules, sometimes fast, sometimes without much warning. A place that's wide open for Americans today could tighten significantly in 2 years. That's why experienced long-term expats always have a plan B. Always. They know which countries they could pivot to if rules change. They start residency paperwork early, even when it feels unnecessary, and they never make irreversible financial decisions, like selling their home in the US, based on assuming a current immigration policy is permanent. So here's the move. Pick one country. Rent first. Always rent before you buy anything. Live through a full winter before you commit to anything long-term. Start your residency paperwork earlier than feels necessary because it will take longer than you think. Get a US expat tax specialist in your corner before you go. And don't build your entire life plan around assumptions a YouTube video gave you, including this one. The math still works in Eastern Europe in 2026, but only for people who go in with realistic expectations, legal preparation, and enough flexibility to adjust when reality diverges from the highlight reel. The window is real, but it won't stay open forever. The people who move first, carefully, with their eyes open, are the ones who look back in 5 years and say they got it right. If you want to start somewhere with less friction, an English-speaking destination where the visa situation is simpler and the transition feels less like a leap of faith, the next video is already waiting for you. 5 English-speaking islands where you can retire on $1,500 a month. Click it. I'll see you there.